Thank you for listening to REED-BBS. Ciao.
REED-BBS. BBS. Will Tank versus Frank make bank? Will Tank versus Frank make bank? Talking about the Gervonta Tank Davis Frank Martin fight on Saturday, June the 15th from Lost Wages, Nevada. Broadcast live on Amazon Prime Video. Frank Martin, he's bringing, nothing. Frank Martin brings nothing to the table, to this table. As Shakur Stevenson said, he's clout chased his way to notoriety. If you remember, Frank was initially offered a shot at the interim WBC, not the interim, but the vacant WBC title. Now that Dev had moved up and vacated, Shakur and Frank Martin was supposed to meet, and Frank had agreed in principle and then pulled out. And as it turns out, pulled out because he was getting a shot at the vacant WBA title in a higher money fight against Gervonta Tank Davis. Can't be mad at that, but yeah, Shakur still says that Frank Martin clout chased his way to notoriety. And while this is the opportunity of a lifetime, no one outside of Frank Martin's circle will tune in to see him perform. He'll just kind of be there. Goes without saying, this is a Gervonta Tank Davis party. So with that, let's examine Tank's pay-per-views. We've done this before if you've listened to my videos, but a lot of people still get it twisted and legitimately refer to Tank as just like this established draw, like it's just understood. Oh, well, Tank is he's a draw and he's the face of boxing and da-da-da-da-da. So let's examine the numbers. Tank's very first pay-per-view headliner was against Leo Santa Cruz, a card that did about 200K to 225K pay-per-views. His next pay-per-view, Tank's was against Mario Barrios, which reportedly did over 200K, over 200,000 pay-per-view buys. Then there was Tank versus Isaac Pitbull Cruz. Now, Pitbull at the time was a late replacement for Rolly and was not a known entity. That pay-per-view did 150,000, 150K buys. It's the fight that put Pitbull on the map, basically. And if they were to ever do a rematch, Tank versus Pitbull, that shit there might flirt with 1,000 because Pitbull is now, he's after that Rolly beatdown of Pitbulls, he's going to be a bit of a low-level pay-per-view entity himself, I think. But back to Tank. His next pay-per-view after Pitbull was against Rolly, since Rolly backed out and Pitbull was the last-minute replacement. So Tank got to Rolly afterwards, and they generated 275,000 pay-per-view buys, 275K. From there, Tank, he fought Hector Luis Garcia. That bout did around 200K, 215,000, 215K pay-per-views. And then, of course, fight with the Ride guy, King Ryan Garcia, which did 1.2 million pay-per-view buys. But again, people speak of Tank like a $1 million pay-per-view, like a $1 million pay-per-view buys, like that's just the fucking norm for him. When in actuality, it's the outlier. The $1 million pay-per-view is the outlier. We don't know Tank's marketability, his viability as a true pay-per-view entity. Now, make no mistake, Tank running shit by today's pay-per-view standards, But he ain't pulling numbers like Canelo's higher pay-per-views back in the day. And I'm excluding the Floyd fight. Canelo had some pretty decent numbers back in the day, which Tank ain't touching, not consistently. Getting back to Ryan, his fight with Haney. Now, there's been no official numbers, but on the low end, it's been estimated at 500K pay-per-view buys. There was also a story of Haney and Ryan doing 1.5 million pay-per-view buys, which is a flat-out lie. They didn't even do 1 million, I don't think. With 500K, hell, maybe 600, 700K. That's more than any pay-per-view Tank has that didn't involve Ryan. Any of them. And with that, as of last social media market close, Ryan has 1 million Twitter followers and 12.4 million more following his every move on IG. On the flip side, Tank's got a strong social media presence as well. 732,100,000 Twitter followers and 7.2 million on IG. And with IG, Tank's, not IG, but Twitter, X, whatever it is these days, Tank's favorite pastime, it seems, is to troll, to initiate Twitter beef, in lieu of actual boxing matches, that is. So now pretty much any big fight these days, Tank will have some fuck shit to say about it. He even said he ain't fighting in Vegas. Like, you already signed a contract. Motherfucker said, well, I ain't fighting in Vegas. They don't respect me. I ain't bringing no money to no city that don't respect me. And your motherfucking ass gonna be fighting in Vegas June 15th. But yeah, on the trolling tip, so after Bud beat Earl Spence, Tank said he'd stop Bud 6 rounds. After Usyk versus Fury, Tank said it takes more than 1 round to win a fight. He was referring to round 9 in Usyk Fury, of course. Tank's had shit to say after Naoya Inoue bouts. He talked shit about the power moves His Excellency Turkey Allah Sheik is making. For the betterment of our sport, no less. Tank even said he'll face Loma next after Loma's recent KO of Kambosos. Tank loves to keep himself in the mix at the expense of other motherfuckers on their fight nights. Now it'll be 14 months since his last fight when Tank climbs in the ring with Frank Martin. So he occupies his time via Twitter beef by being messy about other positive boxing exploits and shit. Like referencing Frank Martin's girl at the presser, then laughing about it. Like, I mean, Tank must have been particularly bored when he clapped at Floyd a couple times too. Rumors of Tank messing around with Floyd's daughter, saying Floyd was being kept in Saudi Arabia against his will. You get what I'm saying. Now some call all that selling the fight, or some say any news is good news. Okay. What we do know is KO sell. Controversy might sell. We do know KO sell. And Tank's got 27 of them hoes in 29 fights, no L's. Tank's live gates, they speak for themselves. Even pre-pay-per-views, Tank was packing the house in the ATL, Baltimore, and other cities. On the undercard with Frank Martin, Tank versus Frank, we got El Monstro, David Benavidez versus Alexander Volzdik. We got Carlos Adames versus Terrell Gausha. And we got Gary Antoine Russell versus Alberto Puello on the undercard. Benavidez versus Boo Boo Andre. They did a reported 60K. I didn't stutter. 60,000 pay-per-view buys. I bought it. Me and 5 or 6 other motherfuckers bought it. But I've seen those substantiated numbers from the Caleb Plant pay-per-view. So as I speak, El Monstro ain't a draw either, which is my point. So he's not really going to help the pay-per-view a whole lot, which gets me back to the question. Will Tank versus Frank make bank? Will Tank versus Frank make bank? We'll have a clearer picture of Tank's true worth as a pay-per-view draw after these damn receipts is counted. REED-BBS, BBS. Blackbird Sugar, Bachelor's in Boxing Studies. Television! Fred Sanford of the Fistic Arts. When all is said and done, there's nothing left to say or do.